Hey everyone, welcome back to a sim racing experience. My name's Jose and I'm a sim racer here in Miami, and today I just wanted to take you along on my second race here in the Ferrari Challenge at Watkins Glen. Now, before I get really into the video, I just want to apologize. I was supposed to have a few more angles here, but for some reason I think I missed the replay and was unable to have those other angles, but I'll have that fixed for the next video. So just finishing up the formation lap here, and I started P6. If you just want to disregard the battle for first box there on the right hand side for now, we're just working our way back to the main straight so that we can get started with the 15-minute session. And here during the formation lap, just getting my brakes up to temperature, getting tires up to temperature, and just kind of getting into that mindset where I'm going to be 100% focused for the next 15 minutes, and I want to make sure that I hit all of my marks. And we're coming down the last turn here. Pace car is going to go into the pits, and we'll be off for the 15-minute session.
Jose, stay calm, focus. Blow it, green, green, green. 15 minutes left.
So just checking my mirrors there, see where everybody's at coming up next to me, and just trying to stay calm for turn one. Down into third gear, this guy comes in and almost pushes me completely off track. Just checking to see if there's any off track there, and we were able to get through cleanly, and from there I had already made up 2 positions and was up into 4th place.
Good start, mate. Nice one.
Coming up to the chicane for the first time, braking I think right around the 300-meter board, and keeping it nice and clean in 3rd gear through the chicane, holding it through this corner here in 3rd gear, just a little bit of brake trailing and just modulating the throttle pedal, just trying to get a clean exit, holding it in 3rd gear here, and a little sketchy accident right there. I had to go wide just to avoid an accident.
Still there. He's still there. Clear left.
And I think he held his position quite cleanly through the corner, and we both maintained our line quite well.
He's still there.
And I hear him coming there through the left-hand side, so I'm just giving him some room, taking the inside line there. And once we got through there, I was clear of him.
Rising. It's now 42.
Nice and clean 2nd gear. 3rd gear, a slight lift, slight touch of the brakes the first 2 or 3 laps just while they're getting warmed up. And once again, coming back down to the last turn here. That's the first lap of the race. Already up into 3rd place here.
Great driving, keep it up. P3.
And there's actually a lot of extra track space you can use on that corner. I was not making use of all of it the first several laps, and I ended up finding about 1.5 to 2 seconds when I started using that extra space. From here on out, it was a lot of just consistency, trying to keep the car clean and just trying to keep it in order to make sure that I didn't lose the car anywhere, and I was able to get to the end of the 15-minute session. I was trying to get a lot of races done prior to this, and between the F3 challenge and just qualifying towards the back of the field here in the Ferrari, it was very tough to get through the first turn, usually because it's quite messy. Quite a messy turn 1 when you're starting from the back of the field. So coming down the main straight, I want to be in third gear, and just before hitting the main straight, I want to hit that curb on the left-hand side, run up to fifth gear. The car can hold it all the way up to fifth gear, and then down into third, hit this curb here. Run the car a little bit wide, but make sure you're out of that curb before the grass, because if not, you're going to take an off track. And all the way flat, all the way to the next corner. This is incredibly fun. This, depending on how much speed you're carrying, I tend to either keep it in fifth. Very rarely you'll see it there where I do pick sixth gear and run it through third there in the chicane. This part here is very tricky because it's going downhill, so the car wants to push wide and you're just constantly brake trailing and playing with the throttle just to keep that nose in check. A lot of what you're doing throughout the entire race is just playing with both pedals, just trying to keep that nose at a point where it's pointing to where you want it to go, and making sure that you hit that apex and you're able to maintain that apex line.
Okay, Jose, 10 minutes to go. That's 10 minutes left.
And all I'm doing here through kind of the middle section of the race is just focusing on hitting every single mark, hitting every single apex, and just making sure that I get the car on track cleanly. Because what ends up happening is that if I don't do that, usually I start carrying too much speed through a corner, and it's usually what ends up making me spin the car and then ruins my race.
P3.
So even with the car in front of me, I'm just focusing on my line, focusing on my race. And after talking to some other pro drivers, it made very clear sense when going back to a few weeks ago when I was having just a very bad week. It just becomes very clear when you're doing somebody else's race. And what I mean by that is, if I'm following a car, sometimes you want to, or sometimes I want to just follow them through that corner, and what I end up doing is going offline, and it puts me in a position where I can't defend, nor can I produce a clean pass. So usually what ends up happening now is I try to just stay in my line. What happens is that the car in front, they get to a point where if they see you, they're going to be in a defensive line, they're going to start defending their line, and more often than not, you want to try to use that to your advantage. Kind of play the mind game where they might move over to defend, and you really didn't have to do anything other than just stay in your line, because they moved over and it just created a perfect opening for you. And there's still time to be made up. There's still about another 1.5 seconds to be made up. And I think a lot of it will be found right here on turn 1. Just trying to figure out where the right braking point is and where the right turn point is, so that I can maximize my speed and use as much of that road as possible. There's such a long stretch from turn 1 all the way to the next heavy braking point that I want to make sure I'm using as much speed as possible and carrying as much speed as possible, so that that momentum takes me through to the end of the race. Right here we are actually gaining a bit of time and on the guy in front, so just focusing on that distance, keeping that distance in my peripheral, just so that I can continue on my line, and whenever he gets close enough I can see it in my peripheral to where I can maintain as much of my line as possible while still seeing the other driver and being able to make a pass if if there's enough space to do so. Trying to use as much of that slipstream as possible just to try to close that gap. With just under 6 minutes to go here in the session, I wanted to try to push as much as possible and use everything else that I had available to me to try and get past. And when it comes to the mindset of a race like this, or just really any kind of a race, it's really comes down to
That's 5 minutes to go. Come on, keep it together.
putting myself
Podium here.
in the mindset that I'm just following the track. I'm just following the track and being aware of what's coming up, being aware of what's around me.
The track
And
temp's increasing. It's now 44
that's what
Celsius.
really gives me the ability to drive cleanly. And going fast is mainly a byproduct of being consistent and being smooth. If you're smooth and consistent, what ends up happening is that you start getting into a perfect rhythm, and that perfect rhythm turns into speed. And the better you have that rhythm, the more you understand that rhythm,
Okay, Jose, stay close.
the easier it
Wait
is
for him to make a mistake.
for me at least, to get faster and faster and get up to the top of the field, instead of having to push so much, where I think a lot of new drivers get into this mindset of they have to be fast. And I see it so much in other sim drivers where they try to go too deep into the corner, and it happens to me when my mind's not in its perfect state, but it happens to everybody, I think. And it really comes down to just slowing down to go faster. And I truly believe that, and I'll always continue to believe that, just because I really do think that you have to be as gentle as possible with the car in order to get it, in order to get the most out of it. Slight mistake there on the corner, took a little bit too much apex. Just under 3 minutes to go there. We've got a 1.3 second gap on P2. Back there, I selected 4th gear a little bit quicker than normal just to have the car settle. There was a bit of a closer gap to the car in front, so I wanted to make sure that the car was nice and settled on track before I put the power back down. So selecting 4th gear did that for me. Made another slight mistake there going down into first gear. Usually that corner I want to hold it in second gear, and it going down into first gear cost me a little bit of that forward momentum, which in turn opened up the gap a little bit more, and with 20 seconds left on the clock, we're on the starting the last lap now. So of course the gap was a little too big to make a pass, and I thought I was going to be able to make that pass, but it was too far offline, and I was just too far back to close the gap. And even right here on the last lap, all the way to the end, I'm still pushing as hard as possible. You can see the gap did close a little bit, but in the end it was still too close to call, or too close to make that gap, I should say. Overall, very happy with the performance here. I love Watkins Glen. I think it's such a great track that flows so well and so smoothly, and I feel that now for my second race it was significantly more consistent than the other one, and I was able to find a lot more time, which in turn put me up closer to the front of the field, and that's how I was able to end up P3, which is always good to be on the podium. The last race prior was, I think, starting from P8,
well done. Decent
and
drive.
just an accident at the beginning of the race took me out, so I was unable to finish that race, but definitely very happy that I was able to find a nice consistent flow here for the second race at Watkins Glen.